Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tracy Developer Meetup. This is our second meetup that we're doing online through Twitch. So the last one was successful. I'm sure this one is going to be great as well. Today we have guest Alain Chautard, and he's going to be talking about SEO, so search engine optimization. So this is a live stream. So please engage with us in the chat. Both me and Alain want this to be an interactive experience. It's better that way. So if you have any questions, type it in the chat. I'll stop Alain, and he'll be able to answer them. If there's any kind of video or audio problems, please let me know as well. So that way I can work towards correcting them. And I'll let Alain introduce himself on what he's up to.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. So tonight we're going to be talking about SEO tips and tricks for the modern web. So my name is Alain, or just Al, and I'm a Google developer expert in web technologies, more specifically Angular. So I started my career back in 2006 as a Java full stack developer, and I got more involved on the web side of things in 2011. Got into AngularJS, became addicted to it, and I've been working with JavaScript and Angular since then. So I live in Sacramento, California, where I organize the GDG Sacramento Meetup group, which is also merged with the Angular Meetup group. And on top of that, what I do these days is I'm self-employed. I run my own company, angulartraining.com, where I do consulting about 60% of the time. So that's really coaching dev teams that are new to Angular, that have to start a big project, don't know how to do it, or need some extra assistance and want to make sure that they're doing things right. So that's where I come in and help them do those kind of things. And the rest of the time, I do technical training. So that could be blogging, that could be speaking at a conference, that could be working on a video course or on-site training. Even if these days, as you can guess, with the virus out there, we don't do much of that anymore. But yeah, I do get to travel quite a bit to teach Angular all over the world.
Awesome. No, that sounds great. Just let me know when you want me to switch over to your screen view, and we'll go ahead and do that. Right now, it's just our faces.
Okay, yeah, you can switch now.
All right, the screen is up. It's all you, man.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to be talking about SEO. And SEO stands for search engine optimization, which I'm pretty sure you were aware of if you're around here tonight. But the main idea behind SEO is make your content shine so that search engines are going to display that content toward the top of the first page of the search results. Especially these days, if you're not on the first page of Google, you basically don't really exist. A few years ago, people would still go to maybe page 2, page 3 of Google. But yeah, 2020, first page, and even the top of the first page is really where you want to be to get some traffic. So there's different ways to do that, and I'm gonna cover mostly technical SEO, so what you can do from a technical perspective in your web app to make sure that it gets indexed properly. But I'm also gonna cover some more generic SEO topics. Now the thing is, and that's a warning before I get started. I'm good in Angular and JavaScript and web development, but I would not call myself an expert on SEO. I'm lucky enough to be a Google developer expert, which gives me some kind of insider access at Google. So I was able to talk to some very good people at Google who work on the search engine and the crawling. So that's where I got most of that info. I'm going to give you some Twitter accounts and YouTube channels to follow at the end of the meetup, where the Google team puts all of that stuff. That is very helpful from for SEO perspective. So I'm not an SEO expert, but I'm a blogger. So I do have content out there, and I do have content that works pretty well. So that's how I learned how to get better at SEO. And so the tips that I'm going to present tonight are a mix of what I learned doing my own blog and a mix of what I've learned basically doing SEO for clients with the help of what I got from Google. So the very top thing, the most important thing when we talk about SEO is content. Meaning that if you don't have anything interesting to rank, search engines are just going to ignore you. That's as easy as that. But if you do something really well and people notice it, they share your content on social media and they like it. So, you know, these days, every blog has a way to do a thumbs up or a clap if you're using Medium. These things are indicators that Google and other search engines are really using to see if the content is popular or not. So that's important to be aware of that as well. So great content will always get great rankings. Can take some time, but if you're writing the best piece ever on anything, people will find you. SEO is going to improve, and your blog post is going to end up in a great place. That's basically always true. No matter, even if you do everything else is wrong, this should work. It might take a little bit longer if your website is not optimized for that SEO part of things. But great content is really the key. And when it comes to content, the idea is to be the first at doing something or to be the best. So if you're answering a question that nobody else has answered before, this is going to work very well. Meaning when people look for that question, you're very, very likely to be at the top of the search results because you're the only one providing the answer, basically. Being the best is more difficult because you have to get the social proof so you have to write something, you have to have a lot of people read it, thumbs up on it, reshare, all of that. And that's a longer path to get there. Being the first is usually easier. So content is king, always. Second thing, strategy. So making sure your content is discoverable and shareable. So search engines love social proof, meaning they want to be able to see what you posted. So they have to be able to see your web page, meaning it has to load in a reasonable amount of time. If it takes 15 seconds or more to load your web page, that's going to be very bad, and the crawlers are going to give up and not rank your website. So it's really making sure that things show up pretty fast, that the text is here, that it is readable, that there's no that you're not trying to cheat, basically. That's also important. So no keyword stuffing or that kind of thing. No repeating yourself, no copy pasting from other sources. All of that is very important. And technology, so these are some of the tips that we're going to see later. Make your code crawler friendly. And we're going to use some tools to help with this and get some insights about what we are doing right and what we're doing wrong and how to improve. So these are the different topics that I'm going to cover. I'm going to start with content, even if I know you want to hear about the technical stuff, because every tech person wants that. Still, content is so important that I have to emphasize that it is the number one thing that you want to do. And I have a true story about that. Last year, I think, or a couple of years ago, I was teaching Angular in Texas, and one of the attendees of my training was asking a lot of questions. He was very active. He was really 100% into it. And we took a break. And during the break, I just disappeared because I want to rest my voice and drink something and get back refreshed. And during the break, he went on Google and he basically Googled a question that he wanted to ask me. And I came back from the break and he told me what you can see right now on my screen. He actually gave a recommendation on LinkedIn. And he said, well, during the break, I was Googling a question that I had for him. And the first result that came up was his blog post on my question. So he was just super impressed about that, because I was teaching him Angular. He had a question, he would Google that question. First thing that pops up is my blog post about it. So that was pretty good. I felt very good about it, of course. I thought, oh, okay, that's nice. It means that I'm doing SEO the right way. So how did this happen? So this is the exact question that he was looking for. He Googled exactly these terms: how to do custom form validation Angular. And the first result was my blog post, which was exactly that: how to implement custom form validators with Angular. So the title was almost an exact match of what he was looking for. And of course, the keywords and the explanation in here were right what the person was expecting. Actually, I'm even showing up before the Angular website itself, which is rare, and and that's why I took a screenshot of it, just because this never happens. But yeah, in that case, this question is something that I had myself for a while, and finding the right information online was tricky, meaning there was no real blog post that would answer that question in a very straightforward way back then. So in February 2018, I thought, okay, nobody has answered that question yet. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to write a blog post that just answers that question with everything you need to know. So I did that. It worked. And now for this specific search, or some slight variations of it, I'm ranking in the top 3 on Google. So in that case, I don't know if it's the best content out there, but I was definitely one of the very first to put it out there. And that's super important. So that's content, and the importance of thinking that way. If you're a blogger, thinking, oh, okay, how can I be helpful? Can I write something that nobody else has done before? If you pick a topic that so many people have wrote about it already, then you're competing with them, and it's unlikely that you would rank at the top of the search results. Just because one of the other things that Google takes into account is how long this content has been out there. So for a specific search like this one, now it's almost 2 years ago, and which means it got time to get a social proof on top of it. So people sharing it, linking to it, doing some claps on Medium on that blog post. So this helped a lot to make it rank.
So we have a question coming in, and I don't know if we're getting to this subject and we want to hold off on it. But the question is, do keyword meta tags really matter? I know other meta tags matter a lot, but have heard that the keyword tag doesn't impact much.
It used to matter. 10 years ago, that was very important. But these days, a lot less. Meaning Google is going to still parse those keywords and try to get some info out of it. But it almost doesn't matter anymore, meaning I don't think it would make any difference in terms of rankings. It's just one of, let's say, 1,000 different things that Google is going to look at. And as a result, not doing it is not going to impact you in a negative way, I think. It doesn't hurt to do it, that's for sure. But not doing it is okay these days. It was not the case 10 years ago, but yeah, these days that's perfectly fine. And the reason for this is because people have abused this, and they would add thousands of keywords on every web page, and it became meaningless. And that's the thing with SEO. It's always evolving because people are always trying to beat Google, trying to find a way to rank. When they find it, everybody's doing the same thing, then the rankings are off. So Google has to adjust and kind of penalize the ones that are cheating. And that's one of the reasons why the keyword stuff is not really working anymore. But yeah, 10 years ago, that was the thing to do. That's for sure.
Thanks. He said that that's what he thought. Thanks.
Perfect. So my blog post, as I mentioned earlier, why is it on the first page of Google? It answers a very specific question that was not answered before. So remember, be the first or be the best, or both. That's even better. But in that case, I was pretty much the first on that topic. The other thing that was important, I think, is to put your content on a platform that helps with discoverability and shares. In my case, I'm using Medium. And the reason why I like Medium is because they're going to do the promotion of my blog for me. And they're basically, suggest my blog post to people who read similar content. And this brings the numbers up pretty quickly. I used to blog outside of Medium. When I switched to Medium, my audience grew 10x in just a few weeks. And it keeps increasing in a pretty steady way. So if you're not scared, I know that some people don't like that, using a platform, because do you really own the thing? And what if Medium shuts down? All of these things are valid concerns. Still, if you want to have your content seen pretty quickly by tons of people, it's a great way to get started. And you could start your blog on a Medium to build your following. And then once you're successful, move away from it, for instance. But still, I would recommend it no matter what. I'm not planning to move away from Medium anytime soon, because it just works very well for me. And the other reason why this specific content ranked pretty well is that there's social proof to it. So there's 8 organic backlinks, which in terms of SEO is actually very, very little. There's only 8 different websites that are linking to that article. It's not 100 or 1,000, just 8 links. But they're all organic, meaning I didn't create them. It's users who wanted to share this tutorial, put it in another website or in a comment somewhere, and they are all organic and legitimate. And 139 claps on the Medium, probably a little bit more now, which, same thing, that's not a lot. Some blog posts on Medium, they have like 1 million claps or thousands. I only have 139. And still, with so little social proof, it's ranking first place if you look for that specific question. So it's possible to rank content without having thousands of followers and thousands of shares and all of that. This blog post is the proof for that. So that was my part on content. Now we can get into the technical side of things. Is there any questions on content before I move on to?
No, I think that this next question is kind of technical. So you can feel free to answer this later or now. But the question is regarding the speed of loading a page. Is this is it a factor taken into consideration with server-side rendering of websites?
So yeah, I'm gonna get into that in a little bit more details very soon. If your website is really slow, and by really slow, I would say more than 6 to 8 seconds to load everything on the main page, then using server-side rendering to speed things up is a good idea. If you don't, the content is still going to be indexed, but you won't be considered for the first page, basically. You're going to end up on page 10, 12 of the search results, which is pretty much like not existing at all. So speed matters, and I would say 5, 6 seconds, 8. If you're in that range, then yeah, consider server-side rendering. If you're in the 4, 5 seconds to load everything on the landing page, that should be okay. If the content is really good, SEO is going to work anyways. But the faster, the better. That's always true. Meaning, if Google finds 2 pieces of content that are the same quality, that treat the topic in an equal way, I would say, the speed is what's going to make one or the other rank better, right? That's one of the several criteria used to rank So all things being equal, speed is going to be a very important factor. And that's why the faster you can be, the better it is.
Excellent. Thank you.
So technical SEO, what can we do to make things better? So the tricky part with SEO is that you have a crawler, you have a robot opening a web page and trying to figure out what your web page is all about. So this robot is going to crawl your page, see what's in there, and then decide, well, basically, it's going to have to give it a rank and see if it's worth doing it or not, worth ranking it or not. Up to last year, this was even more tricky because most web pages, if you built your website with, let's say, React or Angular or Vue, it would look like what you see on my screen right now, which is really just a main div where the content would be loaded, some scripts, some CSS, but by default, the crawler would just see that kind of stuff. And unless it's able to run JavaScript properly and let the web page build itself, then none of that would be indexed. So this has been a problem for a long time because Google was, I think, one of the only search engines to try to render JavaScript, so to try to interpret what you're doing with all of these scripts before rendering the page. But even so, it was doing it with a version of Chrome that was at least 2 or 3 years behind. Meaning that if you're using ES6 JavaScript, so if you're using things like promises or spread operator or any modern JavaScript, this would just not render properly. It would throw an error on the Google Chrome crawler that is used by Google itself. So that was a big issue. And we'll see that these things have changed. But the way the process works is that, so Google has these crawlers that are just, going through the web, following all of the links defined and trying to go through every single web page to see what's in there. When a new page is found, it gets added to a crawl queue. And the crawler is going to get the content, the index HTML, and just say, okay, that's what it is. If everything gets loaded, it's static HTML, then it's going to be able to work with it and see the content. But if it's using JavaScript, then it's going to stop here and say, oh, okay, this needs JavaScript to be rendered, so I'm going to put this in a processing queue. And later, which could be 1 hour or 1 week, depending on how your domain already ranks, depending on what your reputation is, basically with that blog or website, it can be faster or slower. And in the processing phase, what's going to happen is that then there is going to be a render queue where Google is going to render your web page. So it's going to use an actual Google Chrome to render the web page, see what it looks like, make sure all of the content shows up using JavaScript. And from there, it's going to be able to index that content and rank it. So this means a couple of things. When we're using a lot of JavaScript, the indexing is going to be slower because the crawler is not going to be able to see your content right away, and it's going to have to put it in that processing queue. And it can take, as I said, 1 hour to 1 week to get that content rendered and then indexed and then ranked. So that's why when you put something out there, it's not going to, well, if you have lots of links to that content and your website is already ranking pretty well, it would be indexed fairly quickly. But for the rest of the world, it's going to take a few days to get there. So that's a process that Google is going through for every single web page. And these crawlers, they keep doing that. So they keep scrolling the internet all day long, finding all of these web pages and feeding those queues of parsing, processing, rendering, indexing, and re-ranking. So that's what Google does in a nutshell. So JavaScript used to be a problem because it would slow things down. And as I mentioned, Google was using an older version of Chrome to do that rendering. So if you are using modern JavaScript, it would not render properly, and some of your content could fail to be indexed properly because of that. So since 2019, Googlebot, which is Google's crawler, is now always using the latest version of Google Chrome. So what you see in your own browser is what Googlebot sees when it goes through your web page, which is perfect because that's what we expect, right? We expect a crawler to see what we human beings see when we go to the web page. So if you can see a web page in Chrome right now, then it can be indexed and it can be ranked. So that's a good news because for years and years and years, people would tell you, oh, you want to rank? Well, don't do too much JavaScript because it's going to impact your rankings negatively, which was true to some extent. But that's not the case anymore. So now Google is fully up to date, using the latest version of Chrome, just like us. And as a result, anything that you see on a web page can be indexed by Google. So that's a big news.
So I guess maybe I have a question, and I don't think you mentioned it already. So since JavaScript's not a problem anymore, what about say JavaScript that takes a little bit of time to render on the page? So how long does Google's bot wait before the page has rendered?
It is going to wait for as long as it needs. If it takes 30 seconds, it's going to take 30 seconds. If it's 2 minutes, it's going to take 2 minutes. The only thing is, if it does take 2 minutes, then it's going to rank you, but it's going to rank you at the bottom of the rankings.
Sure, of course.
So it's still going to do the job. It's not going to give up, but you're not going to get anywhere interesting with a slow app, no matter what.
And do certain things happen for sites that say have infinite scroll, where it's dependent on user action in order to load data?
Oh, that's a very good question. So if you want to rank more content in that case, of course, Googlebot is not going to scroll. Or if it does, it's going to give up at some point if it sees that it keeps adding some stuff as you scroll down. So I know that some people, what they do is that they serve a specific version of their website for Googlebot. Because using the HTTP header, you can see, oh, this is a bot trying to access my website, and you can serve a different page. So what they would do in that case is remove the scrolling and instead load, let's say, the 10 latest blog posts, for instance, or have a queue of more content. Now, maybe not too much, because if you do too much, you're going to be slow and it's going to impact you negatively. So it's about finding the right balance to make things fast and have enough interesting content on that page for Google to index pretty quickly.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a thing that people are doing, and not so long ago, Google was actually recommending that if your website was using a lot of JavaScript and it was slow to load all of that, they would say, the SEO team themselves at Google would say, well, you can create a server-side rendering just for us. So have your app make the decision, oh, it's Google parsing us. Let's serve the server-side rendered version with all of the HTML in it so we can parse it and index it easily. And the rest of the world just gets all of the JavaScript and the regular app, basically. So I think it's interesting to see that Google was actually recommending to do that. So they could parse your website in a more efficient way and see all of the content. But that was before what I just told you, which is now we're using the latest version of Chrome. So that kind of workaround is not needed anymore. So far I've been talking mostly about Google, and you might be thinking, okay, this guy is a Google developer expert, is only talking about Google, but what if I want to rank with other search engines? So this is the big picture of search by the end of 2019. So Google had almost 93% of the market. And in second place, you have Bing, which is 2.3%. So just like all things, where do you want to put your effort? Do you want to make sure that 93% of the market is going to see you, or do you want to focus on the 2 or 1% for Yahoo and all of that? And even the other ones, if you see position 4 and 5, so these are the Chinese and Russian search engines. So it might be something that you don't even want to rank at all because it's not your market. So yeah, Google is by very, very far the number one. And the thing is, Google has so much has become such in a number one position that the other search engines, they're basically kind of using Google search as a way to influence their own rankings. So if they see that something ranks well on Google and not in their own results, well, they're going to boost it in their own results to look more like Google. So in other words, if you rank well on Google, you're going to rank well on Bing and Yahoo because they're just going to follow what Google does anyways, for the most part. So yeah, I would say if you please Google, you're all good to go. and that's why it's really the focus of my talk. And whenever I do SEO, I don't even think about Bing or Yahoo because I mean it's just 3 or 4% of the market. So yeah. So what can we do to help with SEO? So there are some pretty basic things that that can help. And some of these things, we used to do them before we had a JavaScript framework, like what I talked about earlier, having descriptive meta tags and descriptions and keywords. But with single page applications, we tend to forget about these things because we're just using JavaScript to generate the page and display components. So all of the pages end up with the same title and no keywords and no description and nothing like this. So because it became so mainstream to use frameworks to build things, too many pages have the same title and description, and it ends up being a negative thing for you. So you can, it's something to have in mind with modern JavaScript, whether you're using React, Angular, Vue, or anything else. Make sure that you still have a page title that's going to be unique for every page. So if I navigate to a specific part of your app, the page title should reflect what the content is on the screen right now, and the keyword same thing, and the description same thing. The reason why it's important is because if all of the pages have the same title and description, then it can seem like a fake website where everything was auto-generated and you basically duplicated the pages and changed a little bit of content in there. And this is not good from an SEO perspective. So making each and every page or screen look as unique as possible from a title, meta tag, and description perspective, that's the reason why it's important. If you're blogging and using a platform, this is usually done, but with the modern frameworks, we tend to forget about those kinds of things because we're too much focused on JavaScript and sometimes forget about the basics of HTML. And that's super important. That was one of the number one things that these SEO people at Google would talk about. They told us, well, people just don't do that anymore, and because they don't do it, it's becoming a negative thing for us, for them. They should still do it instead of focusing just on JavaScript. And that's a very easy win. That's something super easy to implement. So that's technical tip number one. Don't use generic titles. Make them very, very specific, as much as you can. The other thing that's important, and that's another one of the other things that we used to do well in the past, but with JavaScript frameworks now, we have so many ways to deal with links that we tend to get them wrong. So a link should be a link. What Google is expecting from us is that a link is a tag with an href. If you do that, then Google is going to say, oh, okay, this is a link. I can click on it and go to the next page, basically. If you're doing anything else, so all of the examples down here, if you're using an onClick event listener instead of href, if you're using a button with an onClick to navigate to some other place, or any other HTML element with an onClick to go to another page, any of those things, every time you add some JavaScript to that navigation, it's gonna be negative. So the top two are the ones you should go with. So always have an href, make a link, so use the a tag. If you do need JavaScript for the navigation, then use the onClick still, but provide an href no matter what, because that's what's gonna help the crawler know that, oh, okay, this is a link, this is the destination of that link, so now I can click it and see what happens. So that's, again, something super easy to fix in any web app, and it's going to help with SEO, because then Google is going to be able to click around in your application and discover all of the content, which would not be the case if you're using all of these examples down here. Another thing that Google likes a lot is good-looking human readable URLs. So good examples at the top, example.com/traditional URL or example.com/blog/how to do this thing. Not so good, so avoiding the fragment identifiers. So if you have a hash in the URL, Google is going to ignore everything after the fragment. So all of that info is lost. And as a result, well, you can lose a lot of context from that. So the more text you put in the URL, the more you make that title explicit and meaningful, the more it's going to help as well. So that's another pretty easy thing to do. Rich results. So adding structured data to your website. So if you're using Google on a daily basis, which I'm guessing most of us are doing, you probably noticed that for some searches, you get different sorts of results. Sometimes you'll see some cards that show you an image or a video, and even ratings or some extra info. For instance, here, there's two examples at the bottom of my screen. One was a search for an apple pie recipe, and this showed some recipes card that show you pictures and reviews and all of that. And the other one is if you're looking for a product. So if you look for a product, you get more info such as the price, is it in stock or not, usually the store that is the closest to you, those kind of things. So that's what Google calls rich results.
So we have a question coming in.
And
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So the question is quite a long one. So it says, South of Shasta says, as developers, we're used to fixing the bug, clicking refresh, and seeing the results of our code pretty instantly to see if it corrected the issue. With SEO improvements, there's a lot of lag between days, weeks, etc., on knowing if you've made any kind of impact. What are the best things that we can do to minimize that lag and know more quickly if the changes we made hurt or helped the website?
Yep. So in a few slides, I'm going to show you all of the tools that you can use to make the process faster.
Awesome.
So the answer is coming very, very soon.
Perfect.
So structured data is something that you don't have to do, but if you want Google to use your page to create those sorts of cards and rich results that provide some extra info, then it's a good idea to add those things to your web page. So that's what they look like. So if you have articles with images or videos and want to have that sort of result, then you would need to add rich data to your articles. If you're talking about a book or books and you want the result to show up as books, same thing, there's rich results for that. There's quite a few: carousel, course for technical training, critic review, data sets, events. So if you're organizing an event and want that to show up in Google search, and they're adding more and more. There was definitely more there than there was last year. So they're increasing how many different types of search galleries they render in the search results. If you want to be considered for these rich results, then you have to add structured data. So I'm going to click on one of those, let's say article, for instance. And this is an example of what you would have to add to your web page. So it's basically a script tag, application LD plus JSON. And in that script, you're going to add some context information about your article. So you can add a bunch of images, you can add when it was published, modified, who's the author, who's the publisher, headlines, the URL of the article, and all of these sorts of details. So this JSON that you add to your web page, that's the structured data that Google is going to use. And based on that data, it is going to render these cards with rich information. So there's a link to test them out. So once you've added that JSON, you can use the tester here to see the end result. So let's say I got this one. I'm going to test the code, and it's going to show me if all is good, taking a few seconds. Yeah, so this page is eligible for rich results, user rendered HTML. Well, in that case, it just rendered this, and it's able to render the structure that it found in that code. So that's one way. If you're adding that structured data to render as cards or galleries and all of these things, this tool is one of the few that you can use to validate the result and see, okay, I did it right. Google said that my data is can be parsed and is eligible for these rich results. So this has very specific use cases, but it can make a huge difference to get this right. Yeah. So some more things to consider from a technical perspective. Using robots.txt on your web server to disable the crawling of all of the unwanted content. So for instance, for pages, error pages, private pages that you don't want the user to be able to access unless they are logged in, you can use this user agent Googlebot and disallow all of these pages that you don't want to be indexed. Because, well, otherwise it looks bad. As you can see this example down here, the first highlighted page of the website was an error occurred, which is not great. You don't want to click on that. So disabling all of your error pages, all of the, anything that is really not worth indexing is a good idea as well, to make sure that only the relevant content, basically anything that could be a landing page for a user should be indexed by Googlebot and not the error pages or login pages, those sort of things.
So I have a question regarding this.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I saw this. It might have even been on Google's the search console. But should you be using the robots.txt file, or should you be excluding them from the sitemap, or should you be doing both for pages that you don't want indexed?
I would do robots.txt because this one is always taken into account, meaning that's the rule. You're telling Google, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. The sitemap is optional. So sitemap is going to be parsed if it's there, but Google can also crawl your website without any sitemap. So robots.txt definitely have the priority. So if you want to do it in just one place, that would be the one.
Got it. Thanks.
So now the tools to help improve SEO. So the number one that I use the most is Lighthouse. Because with Lighthouse, you can have an SEO audit right from the Google Chrome DevTools. So Lighthouse is in Google Chrome itself. You go to the DevTools, you go to the Audits tab, and from there you can run an audit. And that audit is going to give you everything you need to know about the performance of your website. Are you doing good with accessibility, best practices, SEO, and progressive web apps? And they're even adding more and more things to that. So I'm going to give it a try. I'm just going to go to my website and see if I'm doing okay with Lighthouse. So I go there, I right click, I go to the DevTools, I go to the Audit tab in the DevTools, and here I'm going to click Generate Report. And when I click Generate Reports, then Lighthouse is going to do the analysis of my website. So it's going to try it with different screen sizes, with different network speeds, with a bunch of different parameters to test how responsive you are, how fast you are, did you make things accessible, do you have the right descriptions, keywords, all of these sort of things. So it's running the audit right now. That's why you can see that it's testing a few different sizes. It's even going to test a web page without JavaScript, I think, at some point. Yeah, offline. Does it work when we are offline? No, it doesn't. This is the no JavaScript version. And then it is going to generate my report. And performance is pretty bad right now, but I'm on Wi-Fi. And I'm streaming. Usually it's much better, but SEO is good. And that's great because I'm doing SEO talk. So I wanted to score well on this one. Best practices and accessibility. So if I click, let's say on best practices here, it's going to give me some info about things that I could improve to get closer to 100. So it's going to see, hey, here you're linking to this URL, and it is not a great idea because you should add, of course, no opener or to any external links to improve performance and prevent security vulnerabilities. And if you want to learn more, there's a Learn More link that gets you the full story about what you should do and why. So all of that from that same tool, Lighthouse, which is fantastic. So you can learn a lot just from that, and you can spend days fixing things, and you get immediate feedback. I mean, if you fix something, you deploy, you run Lighthouse again, you're gonna get a new score. So I just love it. So great way to get feedback, and not only feedback, but actually actions that you can take to improve things. So here it's telling me that I should optimize some of my images because it took 2 seconds to load my images, and it's giving me a list of all of the images, the size that I have right now, the size that they could possibly have if I optimize them a little bit.
So what is the biggest problematic thing that gave you a 6 out of 100 for performance? That's like the lowest score I've ever seen, and I think your site is better than that.
It is better than that. See, when I took the screenshot for this slide, I was doing it from home, not using the internet for anything else.
Got it.
And I got a score. Here I got a 6. Yeah, it's probably impacted way too much by the Wi-Fi I'm using right now and the fact that I'm streaming my content. That's I think the main reason why. If I was doing it again on a different machine with a better connection, the score would be better. And the thing is, yeah, if I even go to the to what they would recommend in terms of improvement, estimated savings would be 2 or 4 seconds. My images are actually pretty small already. I resize them, most of them, thanks to Lighthouse. So 21 kilobytes. I could be 18, but that's not much, right? It's not 5 MB per image.
Yeah.
They're all pretty tiny. So network is what's missing with things here. So yeah, it's telling me that it took 5.4 seconds to have the first contentful paint, which is the fancy name to say the user has enough info to be able to do something with your website after 5 seconds.
Yeah, I just ran it on my end. It got higher on my end.
Yeah. And that's actually not great. I mean, the score should be the same no matter your Wi-Fi. It should be using some kind of third-party test tool that using their own server. So you have a benchmark against. Everybody has a benchmark against the same thing. So yeah, performance is to be taken with a grain of salt because of that. The other ones are pretty constant, I think. Yeah, I used to have 71 in best practices, 68 accessibility, 100 SEO. Got almost the same scores here. So yeah, these ones are more stable.
Sure.
So that's Lighthouse, extremely helpful. Gives you a to-do list, basically, out of it that you can use to improve your SEO, your speed, and all things. So that's a great tool to use. Another important one is the mobile-friendly test. So at g.co/mobile-friendly, they have this tester where you can enter the URL of your website, and it's going to tell you if your website is mobile-friendly or not. And this is extremely important because that's something I was actually surprised to learn just a few months ago. These days, I think it's 76% of the internet traffic is mobile devices, which is just wow. Like 76% of any way a web page is being loaded is on a mobile device. So being mobile friendly is not an option, really. If you want 75% of the traffic to be able to see your web page properly, you have to be mobile friendly. And of course, because mobile traffic is very important, SEO is going to be impacted a lot by the result of this test. So if you're not mobile friendly, you're going to be indexed you're going to rank in a not so good way as if you're being mobile friendly. So the test is actually pretty slow here. We'll see what it tells us. I should be mobile friendly. Yes, I am. And it's even giving me a screenshot of what my web page looks like on a mobile device. And there was some loading issues. So it could be that some scripts were not loaded properly. Googlebot blocked by robots.txt. So no, this makes sense for the most part. So you do get some good feedback from that tool. That's another thing to keep track of, making sure that your page is mobile friendly. The other one that's very important is the one that you already mentioned, Nick. That's the Google Search Console. This one is really like the Swiss Army knife of SEO. If you want to get as much info as possible from what Googlebot is doing with your website, that's where you're going to find it. So this used to be called the Webmaster Tools. In the past, they renamed it to Search Console, but it is the same thing. That's where you can add a sitemap to your website, see if it was successfully parsed and what Google discovered in it. You can test the speed, you can test the mobile usability. And one of the nice things in here is you can set alerts. So if one of your page cannot be parsed properly by Google, the Search Console would give you an alert and say, oh, this page that you just added, I cannot read it properly, there's something wrong in it, or some image doesn't load, or we get a 404. All of these sort of things, you can get feedback from the Search Console, which I think is fantastic because it comes from Google itself. And that's very, very helpful.
So we have a question coming in. This is from Alex Zarganis. Do I understand correctly then that Google search yields different results if you do the search from a desktop or a mobile device?
So if you're searching from a mobile device, the rankings can be different. Yeah, that's for sure, because Google would give a higher priority to the websites that are mobile friendly on a mobile device. So if you do want to rank properly for 75% of the web traffic, which is mobile, then passing the mobile friendly test is very important. Yes, and yeah, Google is going to use that indicator to rank you better on a mobile device. So one of the things that is very important here on the Google Search Console, I'm trying to find it because they changed all of that quite a lot recently.
We have a follow-up question too. The question is, so in that case, what is that 75% composed of?
The 75% of mobile traffic? So it's all of the smartphones, tablets, anything that's not a laptop or a PC, I would say. That's 75% of the devices that are gonna that's surfing the internet, basically.
Yeah. So he says, in other words, a bunch of people watching videos isn't important to me. I'm not quite sure what he means. Maybe you do.
Well, I guess it's assuming that people watch videos only on their smartphones, which may or may not be the case. I don't like watching a video on my smartphone because I think the screen is too tiny. But the fact is, if you take the volume of all of the internet traffic today, 75% of it comes from a mobile device. And that's just huge, right? It's I would think it's 20 from my own personal usage, but no, it's actually 75. Meaning people browse the internet mostly from a smartphone. But I'm a tech guy, so I work on a computer all day long, which is why it's probably the easiest way for me to be on the internet. Not everyone works in tech, so if you don't work in tech, you're not on a computer all day long. So your phone is the best option to get there, I guess, for the non-tech people. So yeah, on the Search Console, I was looking for the place where we can ask Googlebot to parse a page. So you can basically say, can you parse this page for me, crawl it, and give me feedback. And this usually happens pretty quickly. So that's one of the nice things about it. You can you can ask Google to crawl a page, and it would do it within a couple hours, usually maximum. And you would get info about it. It would tell you if the page was crawled properly, if it was too slow or not, all of these sort of things. And you can even see a rendering of the web page. It's somewhere in here. Probably in the legacy tools and reports. You can say, oh, maybe this one, URL inspection. Yeah, that could be it. So inspect any URL, and then it's going to focus on this, crawl it, and give you full insights about that page if it can be indexed properly or not. So yeah, that's a search console where you're going to be able to follow quite a lot of things in terms of performance, in terms of search, coverage, and all of that. So I think we're getting close to the end of my slide. Yeah, one of the last thing I wanted to mention is if you're into SEO and you're looking for really great info, Martin Split from Google. So he works at Google in Switzerland and is working for the team that's basically doing Google search, right? So so he's working on the crawler itself, and he's super friendly. He's posting a lot of content on SEO. So I put his Twitter account here, and if you go to the Google Webmasters blog and the YouTube channel that goes with it, most of the videos here come from Martin. So he does tons of tutorials on how to do this, how to do that. Most of the tips that I showed you in this presentation come from him. Is great. If you ask him questions on Twitter, it's very likely that he's going to answer because he's really nice. So yeah, I would say follow him, ask him questions. Is a great guy. And the Google Webmasters channel on YouTube is pretty good too. Lots of videos from the search team, which is basically like getting the info from the source, from the guys who are implementing Googlebot and the rankings engine. So that's as close to the source as you can be in terms of information. So that's all I had for tonight.
Awesome.
So if you want to access those slides, the link is right here. I also added the link to my own blog and my Twitter handle. And I'm of course still open for questions.
Awesome. This was fantastic. I just switched off of the screen sharing that you had. So right now it's just our faces. But if questions come in that people need like a demo from you, I'll definitely switch it back. But no, this was fantastic. While we're waiting for questions, I'm just gonna go over some logistical stuff for the group. This is a live meetup, tracydevs.com, where we're doing this until we're able to meet in person again, at which point we will be meeting in Tracy, California. If we have a question coming in, we're saying, can we have the link to the slides here? Do you plan to share these, Alain?
Yeah, I can put it back on the screen.
Yeah, let me switch over to your screen. Is it the bit.ly link?
Yeah,
all right.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, so to answer your question, just go to that bit.ly link and you should be able to download these slides that Alain put together. And I also shared your website in the chat as well. In regards to presentations, if anyone who's on the line right now is interested in coming to present to the group, whether that be online like this on Twitch or waiting a little while until we're able to meet in person, please reach out to me. I believe the email is contact@tracydevs.com, but it's on the tracydevs.com website in case anyone's curious. Probably not today, but sometime this weekend, I will be putting the recording to this particular event on YouTube. So let me just add the YouTube link to the chat. I don't know if it worked here. My bot seems to have failed on me this time. Oh, there we go. All right, so that's the YouTube link. I'll probably throw up the video online in a few days. So if you came in halfway through and you want to catch up on the beginning, please check it out online. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Alain?
I think I'm all good. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me. You can connect on LinkedIn, use my blog. I'm always open to questions and help people with anything. So yeah, don't be shy. My mailbox is always open. Twitter, blog, same thing. So yeah.
We got a message saying it was very interesting. I learned a lot of SEO concepts that I did not know. Great presentation. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot for the feedback.
All right. I guess if there are no further questions, then we might just call it. What do you think, Alain?
Yeah, I think we're all good.
All right. Hold on.